Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I started my company 4 years ago, and I've watched tens of hours of videos of startup food, so it's really an honor to be here to talk here today. So I'm Philippe. So first maybe I'm going to talk to you about what we do and who we are, and then tell you a little more about what we are going to address here in this presentation. So I'm the CEO of papernest. What is papernest? Papernest today, it's a team of 300 people. We were created 4 years ago. We are both in Paris and in Barcelona. And our activity is very simple. Basically, we try to simplify the administrative life of Europeans. So it can seem very far-fetched for you, but basically what we do is that we focus on people who move and we take care of all the administrative hassle. We take care of subscribing the electricity, broadband, energy, home insurance, moving their mail, moving their magazines, etc. We do everything for them to simplify as much as we can all their hassles. It seems to be, it's a pretty big market. You have 3.6 million people moving every year in France, 15 million in Europe. Worldwide, it's 100 million, a little more even. So it's a pretty big market. In terms of for the company, so we are created 4 years ago. We were 2 founders in a living room. Now we are a little more than 300. We are growing fast, but we did not start it like that. Like a lot of you here today, we were first entrepreneurs, and the topic here is rebranding, meaning that at the beginning, if you have to rebrand, it means that you might have done something wrong in the very beginning. And I think we did. So about what we do first, so this is very simple. Our observation is that we are moving from an ownership era to a subscription era. Before you had a car, CD, DVDs, now you have Uber, Netflix, Spotify, and basically you have more and more subscriptions. The issue with subscriptions are that they are very hard to manage. When you want to subscribe, you want to cancel, when you want to upgrade, downgrade, etc. You have to provide your information, your bank info, you have to log in into your client's accounts. So it's pretty complex, and no one wants to waste time on this. So this is what the starting point, and we focused on the moving part of this experience, because when you move, you have tens of contracts to move, and we started here, and this is why we created papernest. How it works, it's pretty simple. Basically, we try to speak to people who are moving. Once they know our solution, usually they want to try it. We take some information and we find to what contracts and what providers they are eligible, for what kind of prices. They just give us the information one time. It takes 10 minutes, and then we do everything for them. We subscribe, we cancel the previous contracts, and we try to do everything from the moment when they ask us to do something until they have their electricity, they have their internet connection, etc. So we do also the support for the providers. Something which is very important here in terms of context is the fact that we are a B2C company, so branding is even more important for us than it is for B2B companies, obviously. But you have to take into account the fact that we are targeting people at a very specific moment of their lives, and basically, if we want to convince someone to try our solution, we have to talk to him maybe 1 week before his move or 1 week after, but it's a very, very short period of time. So this is why our branding is very specific, and I think all branding for all companies has to be very specific to the company situation and also the customer journey and what kind of customers they are speaking to. So as I said, why did we rebrand? When you rebrand, it means that you did something wrong the first time. And at the very beginning, we were called Souscritoo, which was first a very French name. We had a brand platform and a brand experience which created almost no impression on our users, and we had a trust issue because we are 100% free for our users, meaning that people did not know what's the catch, and they were a little uneasy using our services because basically they didn't know how we could be free and offer them some services. After the rebranding, now we are called papernest. We have a much more international platform. We are present in multiple countries. We measured that. We have a lasting impression. More than 70% of people who use our services recall us after 12 months, which is pretty high in terms of if you bench it against a lot of different brand experiences. And it's a trustworthy brand. Now we don't have these trust issues that we had in the very beginning. So why in the first place did we rebrand? Because Souscritoo was French only, so we went to at the very beginning of the creation of the company, we applied to the Y Combinator, we were selected, but at the Y Combinator, when we had American guys telling what's about your company, Souscritoo, something like that, we understood very quickly that it was not going to be a scalable name. Also because, as I said, we had very little brand impact. The brand was not very useful for us at this time, and because it was not very good. And last thing, also because we created this brand with very little client knowledge. When you create your company, and here I'm mainly speaking to, I think, first-time entrepreneurs, either you are building a product which is better than a current product, but you know exactly who are your customers and how you are going to sell it, or like us, you are trying to build a new service which has no equivalent worldwide, and you don't know if people are going to use it. You don't know how they are going to react to it, and therefore you need to know much more about the reactions of clients compared to what you build. So we had very, very little knowledge. And why did we? So the main reason was that we dedicated very little time to the creation of the brand at the beginning of Souscritoo for several reasons. First, we want to prioritize our time, so we resigned and we launched the company. We had our first client 1 month after, so we had to focus on first marketing, operations, and set up all the company. And we wanted to spend as little time as possible on designing our business cards or having a nice website. We just wanted to have very quickly client feedback. We apply a lot the lean thinking. I hope many of you have read the Lean Startup book by Eric Ries. It really changed the way we started the company. I think that if we did not read this book, we might be something like 30 or 40 in the company. This book enabled us to pivot and iterate very, very fast at the beginning and to find our product market fit pretty fast. And the last point is that about our background. Both my co-founder and I, we were engineers with a consulting background, so we knew nothing to marketing and even less to branding, which is a very specific skill, and that very few founders, I think, have at the beginning. So about what I'm going to tell you in the coming slides, it's about two things. It's not really about the method, because I think we applied a lot of methods, we applied a lot of tools, personalized kind of stuff, but in the end I think it does not capture the essence of the brand and the impact of what your new brand is going to have. And I'm going to try to very humbly tell you how we did it and what was the lesson learned from this experience. Because at the beginning we had very little brand experience, we read a lot, but what I found is that from what I can read on Medium, read on a lot of books, very well-known books, etc., it has little impact and it's of little help when you are trying to build your own brand and try to apply the principles that you are going to read everywhere. So our goal was pretty simple, and this I think is very important. When you set up your brand, you have to know what are going to be the overall goals of your brand. I think this is, as a founder, this is going to be a key element of the decision you are going to make, especially when you rebrand. When you rebrand, you don't do it yourself. You work with a team and work with agencies, etc. So you have a lot of very skilled people who are going to help you do a lot of stuff. When you are a first-time founder, you will have to do it yourself, so it's much harder. So our goal was first to be international, because we wanted to expand internationally. We wanted also to help explain an unknown product. So what we do was completely unknown to everyone. A lot of people still don't know what we do. They are still surprised that it can be free. They are surprised that it even exists. So we wanted a brand that could help us achieve our goal to explain our value proposition. And lastly, we also wanted to generate internal engagement because it's very important to have a team proud of what you do. And it's important because not only because you want your team to be happy, but also because you want your team to be proud of the brand because you want your brand to stand for something. If no one is proud of the brand, it's not going to be implemented. It's like culture. If no one really stands for your culture, no one is going to stand for it in your company. No one is going to apply it. So it's important for your company to have a brand people can be proud of. So the first question we ask ourselves when you wanted to do a rebranding, so we were not like Sandy Blue, we wanted to both change the name and change also the brand platform. So we first asked our question about what is a brand. It's very different from, branding is very different from marketing, it's very different from, I don't know, data analysis, operations, or anything. It's much harder to learn, it's much harder to read about it in a book and to apply it. Why? Because it's not about metrics, it's not about basically applying a recipe. You have to speak to the subconscious of your clients, and this is much harder to do. And from what I've learned when we were doing the rebranding is that no one really knows how it works, no one has can tell you with the confidence that your brand is going to stand out, that it's going to work, that it's going to achieve the goals you want to. You have to take a big leap of faith. So this is very important that you try to understand what is a brand and also all the limitations that you can apply when you want to build it, because all the tools you are going to use, all the talking you are going to do with your customers, all the persona you are going to build, etc. They are useful tools, but in the end, they do not help you capture the essence of the brand. And it can be very easy to try to hide between tools, between some work you are going to do, but in the end, it is not where lies the most important stuff when you build your brand. So you have several definitions of the brand. For example, you have the Jeff Bezos definition, which for me is a very is the proxy of customer experience. It's basically what people tells about your brand when you're not here, and who people. Many people who speaks about your brand when you're not here are your customers. So I think this one is very related to client experience. You have the one from Elon Musk, which is basically the perception of your product, of your brand from your clients. Again, it's about the subconscious. So this is not something which is very well defined, and I think it reflects the fact that branding is a highly complex subject that very few people master well, and you can't go with a specific method being assured that it's going to work. You have to accept that you're going to work on very hard and very uncertain methods. Something which was very important for us too, this is our conviction, is that brand, it's at the tip of the iceberg. It's kind of useless to have a good brand if you don't have a good client customer experience and if you don't have a good product. Because if you have a good brand, you cannot convert, you are wasting money. And if you have, you still manage to have clients, but they have a very bad client experience, you're not going to retain them very long, and you're not going to have good word of mouth. And in the end, if brand is what people tell when you're not here, it's key to have a very good client experience. So we first nailed the client experience part. Now we have an NPS around 60, 70, which is well above the average of our industry, which is at -7. So we first worked very hard on NPS. We built our brand and based on a product. Basically, we had a good product, we had good client knowledge, we knew how clients were reacting with our product, what was their the things that they were afraid of, and then we built the brand because we were convinced that if we did not nail first client experience and then product, it was going to be very difficult to leverage the brand. So just a few elements about the method, but I'm not going to speak too much about the method here because I think method has to be custom to your business, to your situation, to the level of knowledge of clients you have. So there is not one method according to me. You have several tools. You are going to read a lot of stuff in Medium, in books about how to do it. I think it's very important to take this information, to ask people how to do it. But in the end, you are going to have to really think for yourself, trying to ask you very simple but very basic questions and trying to answer them without trying to hide between tools or methods, because in the end you have to try to tackle the unconscious and not some intermediary steps. So when you do the rebranding, so it's something which is important also. I think it's a sequential where you have to do it in. You cannot parallelize this. You have to do it step by step, which is very frustrating. As a startup, usually you do a lot of stuff at the same time. For branding, you first have to nail the name, and then you have to create your brand platform, your design, and then you can have in this order. But you cannot do everything at the same time, because everything has to depends on another part. So we did a brief. Basically, the brief is what you want your brand to be. What are your goals? You have to very clearly explicit it to your agencies, to the people you are working with, so that everyone is aligned, knows exactly what you are trying to do, and that there are no confusion about this. Because many times, apparently, you have a lot of companies where they start working on brand, and 2 months later, they thought a lot about it, and now they want something very different from what they wanted at the beginning, and they have to do it all over again. Something which is important about the brief too, I think, is keep it simple and keep it short, because it's very tempting to try to be a lot of things. You want your brand to be trustworthy, so that you want people to remember your brand. You want people to like your brand. You want to have a good design. You want to have 3 letters, 3 syllables max name. When you are a founder, you have your company is your baby. There is a lot of stuff you want to express through your branding, but you can't do it because I think branding is also about choosing what you are most, and not about just trying to be everything at the same time. So keep it brief, because otherwise you are going to just not stand out and have something very very weak. So then we did the naming. Naming, it was a long process. You could do some people do it themselves, or they hire a consultant. We hired a naming agency, which is a Nomen, which was a good naming agency. We had tens of names. We did a lot of mood board, etc., and it was a very long process. And in the end, we had papernest. Basically, we wanted to express 2 things. With the nest, we wanted to show that we were caring for the users. We were like their mother for all their administrative tasks, and also we want to host all their contracts. So this is why the nest was very important for us, and this was our biggest eureka moment, even if I'm just going to tell you after that there are no real eureka moment in branding, but we had a very strong appeal to this name, and paper was to express our activity. And then, after you have your name, you can try to define your brand platform. So at the beginning, I didn't know what was a brand platform. So basically, my understanding is that it's how you are going to express yourself, what you stand for, what's your relationship with your customers. You are going to define this in a detailed way, and in a way that you can be proud of, and your team can be proud of this, so that you can really apply it and defend it. And then after that, you can redesign your website, you can revamp your product, and you can finally launch with a good press conference, and try to have as much press quote as you can. I'm going to try to be pretty short, but my main learnings from this process was first that don't hesitate to iterate. Branding, it's a long process. If you try to rush it, you are going to be very constrained. So you have just accept the fact that branding, it's a long process. It took something like also 9 months for us, so it's a baby almost. And it's very important to iterate, because you need to start from a very rational brief where you want your brand to express something, and then you need your team creativity to be unleashed. They need to be able to explore a lot of options, to go very far, and only then, where you have several propositions, you can then get back to the real, to the ground, and try to see if it fits your initial brief. So I would advise to take your time, don't rush the process. It's very important, and you can't rebrand yourself every 3 years. Once you have a brand, it's for moreover for forever, or at least for 10 years. So if you didn't do it right the first time, you won't have another chance after that. So as you can see, we try to be sometimes very, we try to explore a lot of solutions. Some were trying to be very engaging for the team, some were less, some were about the solution, some were about the product. We try to explore a lot of different solutions without constraining ourselves at first, and at the end we cut the one which were not for us okay. And how did we do that? We confronted it with the users. So when you are a startup doing B2B, your users are pretty well educated people, like people who are here. They know a lot about branding. When you're B2C, when your client is both the guy who is living here in the Marais, or a grandmother who is 65 years old, they don't have the same kind of understanding, and it's very important to speak to both. Because when you think sometimes that your name you can express some feelings, some notions. When you speak to your customers, when you speak to the simple Joe in the street, you just find that they don't speak English and they don't understand jack shit about what you just created. So it's very important to try to have, in the end, good feedbacks from the street, because this is how people are going to perceive your brand. They are not going to perceive your brand after a nice 10 minutes presentation with very nice slides, very nice mood boards, and a good story. They are going to see your brand 10 seconds on a website and an ad, so they are going to have very little time to understand it. So try as much as you can to see if your brand resonates with real people and not only with your startup friends. Something I think which is very important, it's about avoiding consensus. Our conviction was that we wanted to avoid as much as we can consensus. So we did a lot of surveys with the team, which we wanted the team to be engaged. But in the end, I think it's very important to avoid pleasing everyone. When you have a brief, you want to be a lot of stuff. You want to express a lot of feelings. You want to speak to all your customers. But you cannot do that. A name or a value proposition, a few words, they can't speak to everyone, they can't express everything, and it's not their role. So you have to choose, and when you choose, it means that you are going to kill some stuff. And something which is very important too is that if you follow too much a democratic process, if you basically have people let your vote for your name every time and use this as your only decision tool, basically you are going to end with something which is highly consensual, with very little impact, and that no one will remember. So I think it's very important that you are okay with making strong choices that are not going to please everyone, and but in the end, this is how you are going to be able to stand out from the mass and not just be another very simple and consensual brand. And for an example of that was, for example, the color. So there is nothing very bold about that. But at the beginning, we had very simple colors, green and blue. But we finally chose a very bright violet, and a lot of people in the team didn't like that at all, because it's not really beautiful, in fact. But we chose it because we wanted to stand out. We wanted people to remember it, and in the end, it's one of the most efficient way our branding enable us to print ourselves into the mind of people, because when we go to fairs, to events, when we speak to our customers, they remember very well this ugly color, and it works very well. So don't hesitate to make bold choices, even if it's going to have consequences, but at least you are going to stand out. So, it's Guy Kawasaki who said, either they love you or they hate you, but it's much better than they hate you, that you have you generate no feeling into them. So don't be afraid of that. Be bold. No eureka moment. Something important also, you are going to work for months and months on your branding, and what you enter with huge expectations into that. You want your brand to represent a lot of stuff. as I said, it's not going to be possible. So you have to be aware that you are going to have to make tough choices, and you're never going to have an enlightenment moment where the truth is going to reveal to yourself, and you are going to be to say, okay, that's it, we found it. You can say that to journalists, you can say that to other funders, you can say that during conferences, but most of the time it's a lie, it's just storytelling. So don't wait for it, because if you wait for that, you're never going to produce it. As a funder, what can be your role? So here you have different roles depending on the size of the company. At the very beginning, I was with my co-founder. We were two in a living room, so we had to do everything ourselves. We hired a designer, but we gave her poor directions. So the branding was on us. What's your funder responsibility? I think you have first to let competent people take the lead on this. If you are, it depends on what kind of funder you are. Some funders are product funders, some others are financial funders, others are product funders, others are brand funders, and some are not. So if you don't have a brand sensibility, if you don't have a lot of knowledge, you have to learn, you have to understand very well what you are going to build, but do not hesitate to let other people's creativity be unleashed, because they are going to create something very, very great in the end, much greater than everything you can do. You have to let them express what they want. You have to let everyone participate to the process. But in the end, your role, I think, is to be sure that in the end, what your brand mostly express is coherent what you want it to express. It's very simple to say at the beginning, but after months and months of iterations and discussions, sometimes it's very easy to lose your final objective. So you have to be the one saying, okay, this is very nice, but this is not who we are. This is not what we can be. So we are going to kill this because we want to follow this goal. Yeah, so make sure your goals are fulfilled, because in the end, rebranding, it's not for not just nice, it has a goal and you have to fulfill it. About decision making, I would advise not to involve everyone in the process. So of course you do surveys, you speak with everyone in the team about the branding, but try to have a relevant, competent, small task force dealing with this matter, because otherwise it's very easy to have everyone giving their grain of salt into the thinking process. Not everyone has a good opinion, not because when you think 10 minutes about branding, it's not going to be relevant compared to someone who has spent years, hours, days thinking about this. So try to limit the good input to a small task force. And avoid consensus again, so this is a consequence of that. If you have a task force, it's not to have its boldest ideas cut by the consensus. You have to stand behind your team. How did we measure? So there had been questions just before about the metrics of branding. So first, I think that when you start your company, don't even care about branding metrics, KPIs. And I'm saying this, me, a very, very data-driven funder, we are tracking all our KPIs very closely. We are a very high data-driven company, but I think for branding, you have to first take into account the qualitative feedback. Don't ask people if they find that your brand is nice or not, because they're not going to tell to your face that they don't like it. Even when we had a poor brand, we had compliments about the brand. So if your brand is successful, you will know it. Many people are going to tell you about this. If you just have a few people saying, oh yeah, okay, it's great, nice rebranding, etc., it just means that a few people like it. So you can have people hating it, but if you just have a few people with medium feelings about it, it means that you don't have a strong brand. So yeah, about KPIs, I think that we had KPIs, we measure everything, but I think you have to give yourself some credit, and also take into account the fact that branding, it does not stop at a good name and a good design. These elements are just very often talked about, because when you do your rebranding, you redesign your website, you have a new name, but in the end, branding, it's much more about how you use it, how you talk to your customers, how you react to the news, how you express your company identity in a global ecosystem. It's not about a name and a design. It's much more than that. So this being said, I say don't follow too much this kind of KPIs, but because in the end, the global KPIs are going to appear years later. If you have a lot of referral and if you have a lot of direct acquisition through your brand, it means that you succeeded. But in terms of branding, we had almost zero brand remembrance after we served the clients. So we had clients, and 7 months later, they could not even remember who we were, what we did for them. After the rebranding, we did of course change the design, the website. We changed all the wordings. We had a very different tone of voice. And we measured it last year. We had more than 70% people who can quote who we did, who we are, what we did for them, when, compared to almost 0% a few years ago. So it was a huge success for us. We don't have anymore those trust issues. People were very afraid before about our business model. They did not understand why we were free. They saw that we were going to sell their data or something like that. And this, we don't. What we say, it's exactly the same to the users. We already told them that we were not doing this, that we were free, etc. We were already explaining it in the former branding. We didn't change the way we explain it, but just with a good design, with a good brand platform, something which is current. I think here we touch the subconscious of people, and we don't anymore have this issue. We improved a lot of referral. We had a referral program before. Now it's much stronger today, and we improved it a lot. And now, of course, we have an international platform which is well understood both in France and Spain and in the other countries we are going to open. So basically, this would be my main takeaway. I think I mainly spoke to founders because I have little to teach to anyone else in terms of design or branding. Our experience, what I would advise you is first try to read, to learn a lot about this, but don't hide behind concepts or methods or tools because they are useful, but they are very weak way of trying to speak to the subconscious. Try to involve yourself as much as you can, but not in a way you constrain the creativity, but be sure that in the end what your team is producing is coherent with what you want. And at last, try to maybe dedicate a little more time to branding compared to what we did in the very first place. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I got quick on the microphone and directly took it. Yeah, just a quick question, nothing to do with branding, but I just wanted to understand, how did you do to target those people in a really short frame time that you had? Like they were moving, you said 1 week before, 1 week after. How did you concretely manage to do that?
Yes, that's indeed one of our key changes. So as what we did at the beginning, as an entrepreneur, we set up our website, we tried to set up our operations, and we kind of waited before we spoke to the press, we had a few articles, and then nothing happened, no one was contacting us. And this is when we understood that we had to do some marketing. We were very slow and we had very little knowledge about anything like this previously. So we started to do a lot of tests. I think between April 2015, when we launched, to June 2015, I think we executed at least 25 different tests, testing partnerships, testing Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube videos. We distributed tracks. We went to business school. We spoke directly to students. We tried offline, online marketing, etc. And everything failed at the beginning. But we applied the lean thinking. Therefore, we tried to execute very fast a lot of tests. And after 3 months, we found our first test. So there are no secret recipe here. You have to try to, we mapped the customer journey. Once we mapped the customer journey, we tried to find a lot of places where we could speak to the user about our solution. Some were too early, some were too late, some were too costly, and some were should have worked but did not. So here you have to be very humble and understand that even if you're very smart, it's very hard to predict what's going to work, so we have to test a lot of things. So today we have many different ways of speaking to our customers. We have a lot of data to map and to target people when they are moving. We have direct partnerships with a lot of partners in the moving sector. We rely on our brand and our referral traffic to get clients. So we don't have one way of getting users, but every time, we try to find new ways, and it's very specific to our business, and it's one of the key success factors of why we are here today, is because we tried a lot of different approaches.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for the talk. At a moment, you told us that you had to have a message that would speak to either a man living in the Marais or a grandmother. What message did you choose and how?
Yes, so indeed you have to speak to all your clients, kind of more or less. We did not choose between a message that was understood by the grandmother or by the startup guy creating his own company and very well aware of all the very tech savvy. We iterated a lot and we found a message they all understood. So this is kind of contradictory to what I just told you about consensus. But I think when you are speaking to your clients, you need to be simple enough to be understood by all clients. It's very hard. Simplicity is the hardest thing to achieve. But if you are not able to be understood by your clients, you won't succeed. You won't be able to market yourself. So we did a lot of tests, and in the end we disagreed. So we took our pencils and a sheet of paper and went into the street and we interviewed something like 50 people, and we decided based on that.
You said previously that you did not employ all your employees because it was more efficient, but is that only for branding, or is that for all the other domains? And if it's for other domains, how do you engage your employees?
No, this is only for branding. You have to engage the team as a whole for many topics. So it was limited to branding. For other topics, we have, so basically what you're asking is mainly about culture. How do we create a culture where people can exchange, can participate, and share the company strategy? Here you have several subjects. You can have rituals where we have a monthly all hands meetings where everyone can ask questions, where we give people all the information and where they can react to the information and give their insights, where some part of the team presents to other part of the team what they do. We tested a lot of stuff also. We had breakfast, we had lunches, we had small meetings. We tried to do something with everyone in the same room or something very splitted. But what works the best is when you gather everyone at the same place. In terms of communication, what we try to have is try to communicate as much as possible. We still are doing progresses on this because you never communicate enough as a founder. And I think what's important is when you are 20, 25, 30, it's very easy to communicate, everyone in the team. When you are 300, it's something really different. So you have to implement a process where basically when you have a big decision, it's automatically communicate to all part of the team. And either you do it as a founder during conferences or during all-hands meeting, or you just send emails to inform everyone, and you try to be as clear as possible about all the decisions.
Que la famille.